When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the one who goes along with you. And I would walk 500 miles, and I would walk 500 more, just to be the man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm working, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you. And when the money rolls in for the work I do, I'll pass almost every penny on to you. And I would walk 500 miles, and I would walk 500 more, just to be the man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
Welcome drummers, it's Alan here for drumgrades.com. Today we're covering I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles, which is the second technical focus song in the Trinity Rock and Pop initial book. It's by the legendary Scottish duo The Proclaimers. Let's get down to business. It's 130 BPM, it's a pop song. We've got a classic 2 bars counting, as we know, but let's deal with the intro. Fairly straightforward. Let me play it to you. I'll count us in after 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all it is. We're playing the hi-hat, and we've basically got this miss-hit pattern going on. Up here you'll see the rest we've got involved here. Maybe try and make a point of memorising this. This is a 1-beat rest, or a T rest you might say. So if we were to count along with this intro, we're going to be resting on 1 and 3 of our bar, and we're going to be hitting the hi-hat on 2 and 4. So as I said earlier, we're going to be missing 1, resting, then hitting, resting, hitting. We do that for 2 bars, okay? Very important you count there. Also, I'm striking the edge of the hi-hat with the shoulder of the stick just to give me a nice solid sound, so you guys should try that out too. Here we go, I'll count us in again, a little bit slower, and we'll try that. Remember, we're missing on 1 and 3, we're resting on 1 and 3, and we're hitting on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all it is. Bit quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Job done. Moving on to verse 1. We have this. So, as you can hopefully see in the book and here, I'm hitting the bass drum, and then I'm hitting snare and hat together. So the bass is going to be landing on 1. Again, counting throughout 500 miles is very important. So we're hitting on 1, and then the snare and hi-hat's coming on 2. Then we have this blocky little rest going on. So that's a 2-beat rest, okay? That's the equivalent of 2 of those little squiggly 1-beat rests, okay? So if we're hitting the bass on 1, we're hitting the hi-hat and snare on 2, that little blocky rest is going to take up 3 and 4. So what you might want to do is whisper to yourself for now, 3, 4, 3, 4, or maybe just air drum a little double hit just so you get that space really nice. Very important you get that rest in there. Here we go, after 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. There we go. So we get that for 7 bars. That particular beat. Just before we move on, let's maybe do the transition from the intro into verse 1, because this can sometimes catch people out. Obviously in the intro, as we mentioned, we're hitting on 2 and 4. Miss 1, hitting 1, miss 1, hitting 1. Suddenly we're into verse 1 where we're hitting on 1 and 2. So the beats we're hitting on has changed. And sometimes what tends to happen is as you go into the verse 1 beat, the same pattern carries on of missing 1, hitting 1. But you've got to kind of snap out of that pattern and get immediately into 1 and 2 for verse 1. Let me demonstrate. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully that makes sense. So straight into that pattern. Maybe you guys could stick the track on once you feel comfortable with that and try and jam along. Next, we're going to be on the third line now. We've just played bar number 9, which would be our last time through this. 3, 4. And then you'll notice we've got a fill bar. Very straightforward, sounds like this. We start the bar as we were playing earlier with the bass on the 1 and the snare and hi-hat on 2. And hopefully you guys know this little configuration of notes by now is coffee, coffee, okay? Coffee, coffee. 4 notes connected by 1 line, coffee, coffee. Right, left on the snare. Nice and in the middle, both hands even, nice and big. There we go. So like I say, maybe you could go back to the beginning and try the intro and the verse up to that fill with the song. Let's move on, the chorus. So for the most part, what we have in the chorus is what we might call a 4-beat rock pattern or a quarter note rock pattern. Sounds a bit like this. It's given that name because of the amount of hi-hats we have going on per bar. You might also know an 8-beat or even a 16-beat. And they're all given their names due to the amount of hi-hats we have in a bar, okay? So the 4-beat is no different. And I love 4-beat rock patterns because they're fantastic for that big stomping rock vibe, kind of like an AC/DC heavy rock vibe. You can have loads of fun with that. Particularly good for faster songs as well because you're not having to do lots with your right hand. So if you guys out there find yourself in a band or you're coming up with some cool tunes and you're playing a faster song or a heavier song, maybe check out the quarter note rock beats, they're really good fun. Anyway, the count to go along with that, very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd suggest you guys practice that if you've not done beats like that before. Back to the music. Hopefully some of you will have spotted, look, there's a crash cymbal getting involved with the beat. That's going to be landing on beats 4 of the first 2 bars, okay? So where you'd normally hit the snare on 4, you're now going to be hitting that crash with it. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as I mentioned, we only play that for 2 bars, but I'd suggest you guys might want to just loop that over and over again just to get really comfortable with landing that crash on the 4. So back to the music. We only do it for 2, and then you'll notice that the next 2 bars, no crash. So we're back to just... And then the next 2 bars, you'll notice we've got crashing again. So the pattern is going to be 2 bars with crash, 2 bars without crash, 2 bars with crash. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can't recommend strongly enough counting throughout that. The 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to really help you get in time. It's going to take a little bit of practice. That often what I find is after you've done the first 2 bars with crash and then you go back to the bars without crash, getting the next set of crashes in the right position on the 4 sometimes goes a little bit wrong. It can sometimes end up on the wrong number, but as long as you count, you'll get there in the end. So at this point, we find ourselves in bar 17. It's 2 bars before the end of the chorus, okay? What I often do for my students is draw a little pencil line here or put a little star, whatever works. Let me grab my book for 1 second. Hopefully you guys at home can see where I'm pointing here. 2 bars before the end of the chorus, I draw a little line there, and that just helps with this next portion of the chorus. It's the final tail end of it. And the reason I put the pencil line there is because it's a great place to practice from, and you might often hear me referring back to this coming up in this video. So maybe get your pencil out, write that in, But if not, just remember when I say the pencil line, I'm referring to bar 17, 2 bars before the end of the chorus, okay? Now, if we just deal with this, we've got one more bar of normal beat, no crash. Then we have one more hi-hat, a T, a coffee, and then another T. So if I make that flow now, it sounds a little something like this. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's deal with the fill bar just to break that down. Like I say, the beat's going to carry on one more on the hi-hat into 1. So 1 is going to be bass and hi-hat, then T, coffee, T, all on the snare. And one more. Sticking wise, I often go obviously right on the beat, left, right, left, right. That seems to work for me, but nothing wrong with going maybe right, right, left, right, left, or right, 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 left, right. There we go, they all sound really good. Just figure out what feels comfortable to you. Let's go from the pencil line one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Couple of things to look out for there. What always happens is the beat tends to carry on a little bit too long. So there, when I did that, I went on one too many beats there with the hi-hat. Hopefully you guys spotted that. So just be very careful you don't run on. Make sure you end on the 1 and then into the fill. How about if we did the whole chorus now? 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is, and maybe a little bit of practice at home. You could go from bar 9. I won't do the whole chorus just so we can get on to the next bit, but what about if I did bar 9, couple of bars, the fill into the chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so on. That'll be a good thing for you guys to work on at home. So, intro done, verse 1 done, chorus done. Now we come to verse 2, probably the trickiest part of the song. We're on the snare drum, and this bit is based on kind of like a military marching type feel. There it is. So you can hear the military style there, can't you? And very, very tricky for all of my students, this part, because you guys would have maybe never done anything like this up until this point. You would have maybe done beats and fills, but this type of snare drum rhythm going on, tricky, especially when you factor in the bass drum and the speed of it. So what we've got to do is really break this down and start simple and build up. A few rules I like to follow when I'm doing this. Number 1, we're going to get rid of bass drum. Forget that. Number 2, we're going to go really slow. Number 3, we're just going to remember that throughout this whole of verse 2, we're only dealing with teas and coffees. So as long as you say your teas and your coffees and you get your drinks in place, you can't go wrong. So for example, looking at the start, we've got a tea and then a coffee, then a tea, then a coffee, then a coffee, a tea, tea, coffee, tea, 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 coffee, tea, 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 coffee, and so on. So automatically, just by using our drinks, we're almost there with the rhythm, aren't we? The final rule I think is really helpful is to start every tea with the right hand and every coffee with the right hand as well. Okay, so that means the only time left is going to be required is on the fee of the coffee. Every other time it's just right hand. Now there are many ways you can stick this, and please, if you guys find a way that works for you, go with it. This method I find just works best for me and my students, so give it a shot. What that means by using the right hand on the start of every tea and coffee is that the right hand just then is doing a constant line of notes. which is really good just to kind of anchor the beat and have like a spine running through it, especially when we get the bass drum involved, because the bass and the right hand are going to be meeting up rather than random notes hitting with different things. So again, if I just highlight that again, and I'll bring the left hand, and you hopefully see how the left just dives in on the F's of the coffee, nice and slowly. I'll maybe just play the first line of verse 2 here so you get the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So, like I say, nice and slow, just think about your teas and your coffees. Let's start working our way through it. So, the first bar, 19, easy peasy, tea, coffee. Second bar, coffee, tea, coffee. And the sticking for this is going to be right, left, right, left. Feel free to write all this sticking in as you go. Once again, the sticking for bar 19, the first bar of the verse, was right, left, right, left. Then we get right, left, right, left. Now, the combination of those two bars, the transition between those two, probably the trickiest bit, because you've got two coffees in a row. So make sure those coffees are flowing nicely. Maybe practice that coffee. And make sure that's how it goes. So next two bars after those, this is bars 21 and 22. Easy peasy. Tea, coffee. Right hand virtually doing everything apart from the last little note where the left jumps in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now that whole line, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully that all makes sense. Moving down onto the next line, bar 23, happy days, it's mostly the same as what we've just done. Bar 23 is the same as bar 19, the bar above, and so on, right up until the last bar. So let's just play from 23. And this last bar, tea, coffee. Right, left. Simple as that. Why don't we try the whole of verse 2, just the hand, no bass drum yet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Brilliant. So I would suggest you guys work on that loads and loads until you feel comfortable with it. Don't worry about the song yet. Just keep trying to increase the speed. Make sure it's nice and controlled. We don't want any skippy notes like anything like that. We want both hands even. Practice, patience, you'll get there. Now, next comes bass drum. We'll get that in and then we've done it. So the bass is going to be landing on 1 and 3 of every single bar. So it's doing this pattern. Like so. Let's have a go, maybe the first couple of bars with bass. There we go, hopefully that makes sense. That's probably the hardest bit, again because of the coffee. We've got the bass coming on the second coffee between the two bars. That might be a nice exercise to work on. Coffee, bass on the second coffee. Now both together again. So often mistakes tend to happen there. Teas come in where they shouldn't, coffees come in where they shouldn't, bass drum moves. As long as you take your time, you'll get there with it. The next two bars, nice and simple. It's going to come on the first and third T. Same rules apply for 23, 24, 25. But now bar 26, we've got Going to be on the first tee and the start of the coffee. Hopefully that's all good. Why don't we have one more go from the beginning all the way. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's one of those frustrating ones that at first, because it's new skills, new coordination, awkward. But what I'd suggest you guys do, again, practice lots, but what you might want to do is get used to just tapping it out on your legs, wherever you might find yourself, at school, in the car, at work, wherever, at home. Just maybe get your foot tapping and your knees going. Just working on it all the time, getting it lodged in your memory. And before you know it, it'll be fine. So before we move on, why don't we just work on the transition into verse 2? This can be another little tricky bit. So we're going to go from the pencil line. Remember we wrote that line on bar 17, the last 2 bars of the chorus. We're going to work from those into verse 2. Maybe not the whole of verse 2, just the first couple of bars to give you the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very awkward because the feel is teas and coffees, verse 2 teas and coffees, it's all very similar, so it's so easy to throw in a tea when you don't want it, or a coffee, or come in too soon. You've just got to go slowly and be very careful. I'll break it down really nice and slow now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good stuff. So maybe write the sticking on the fill and the verse 2 bit. Find a sticking that works for you and literally stick to it, okay? Because I often see different sticking patterns happening every time you play it. And the trouble with that is it's just going to be awkward and you're going to get messed up. If you get a regimented sticking pattern down, then you've got something to work with. So I'd suggest writing it in. Next, the chorus, the final chorus. We're back to our 4-beat again, and we're back to our crashes, and pretty much back to the same pattern. We've got 2 bars with crash, 2 bars without crash, 2 bars with crash, and unlike chorus 1, we've now got a whole 2 bars without crash as well. So let's hear that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have the final fill. It sounds like this. And one more. So if I break that down for you, we've got coffee, tea, tea. 1 and 2, 3. 1 and 2, 3 on the hands. But as you'd notice, the last one is crash, okay? Snare and crash landing together. Coffee, tea, tea. Bass gets involved and lands on the start of each drink. On the coffee, on the tea, and then all 3 limbs, right hand, left hand, bass drum, all land together. And try and get them to land dead on, no flamming. We don't want... Okay, so that fill one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe what we could do is go from 1 bar before, the final bar of chorus, this is bar 34, into the final fill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good stuff. So why don't we do the whole of the final chorus? 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you heard, I threw in a little extra crash over here on a different one. Feel free to do that if you'd like to. Move around the crashes if you've got to, just for a bit of fun. The examiners always love to see that use of the kit. So when you get comfortable, maybe get some of those in. That's everything. We've done it. Intro, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, and the final chorus. Verse 2 is the hardest bit. That's the bit to really focus on. Count all the way and you'll be fine. Dynamics. Starts off mezzo forte, medium loud for the intro. Very tempting to come in really loud, isn't it, on that verse 1 particularly? But you want to hold a little bit back and save it for the chorus. Likewise, when you come into bar 10, which is that fill, very easy to slam that fill before the chorus, but we don't want to do that. We want to hold a little bit back, so when we come into the chorus, we're up to forte, we're up to loud, okay? So then we keep the forte, the loud, all the way through the chorus, and then up to verse 2, where we drop down to mezzo forte again. Once again, don't jump the gun with your dynamic. Keep it nice and loud all through the last bit. And then it's going to drop down. Then we keep that all the way. Chorus, back up to loud. So if we think about the dynamics through the song, we've got medium, up to loud, down to medium, up to loud again. The examiner is going to be really, really looking out for that, particularly on the verse 2 bit. They're going to be watching, right, chorus, yeah, that's really good. Let's see if they drop for verse 2. Can't tell you how many students I've got back with their exam write-up and it says, fantastic playing, great timekeeping, could have done more with the dynamics. And think throughout all your pieces, if you just get those little bonus marks, the dynamics, it adds up and adds up. That's what you need to get up to the high merits, the distinction sort of level. So work on your dynamics, guys. Can't stress that enough, how important that is. The examiner's really looking out for that. It's the technical focus song as well. So there's 30 marks up for grabs here. So let's try and get all of them if we can. I think that's almost it. The only other thing to comment on is obviously timekeeping. As I always say, this is where our videos are slightly lacking because I'm not there listening to you. Some students are a bit fast in areas, some a bit slow. Who knows what you're like, but as long as you take your time, play along to the demo version at first, maybe air drum to get locked in, and eventually build up the speed and get it with the track. You can't really go wrong if you're just patient. All right, guys? So that's 500 miles done. Good luck with it. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.